morning and welcome to today's lesson where we shall talk about the forms of communication. Remember, we've been able to define what communication is. We've been able to say the advantage or the importance of communication. We've also been able to capture the barriers or challenges that makes it difficult for us to communicate, and also guidelines on how we are able to overcome those challenges. Okay, so today I want us to talk about the forms. Now, when you hear the word forms, what should come into your mind? Okay, remember we said communication is a way of passing information from a sender to a receiver through a medium with an intention of getting feedback. Now, when you talk about the forms, we are referring to the channels. How do we communicate? How do we pass information? Is now what we call the forms of communication. For example, I am communicating to you through a video. Okay, so the video is a form of communication. I'm communicating through audio because you can hear the sound, video because you can see. So those are what we call the forms of communication. Now we've got different types of forms of communication. One of it is what we call the oral communication. Now, oral means what? Oral means passing information through spoken words. Okay? Yeah? Spoken words how? For example, face to face. When you're talking to somebody as you see them, that is a form of oral communication. When you call that person on telephone, remember, it is through spoken words. So when you call that person on telephone, that also is an example of oral communication. When you're giving speeches, speeches are also examples of oral communication. Now, every form of communication also has got its own advantages and disadvantages. So some of the advantages of oral communication is that we say it is immediate and you're able to get instant feedback. How do you get instant feedback? Because when you talk to somebody, if there's something they would need to clarify, they are able to ask you, and therefore they're able to give you their feedback. So when you communicate orally, the information is immediate and instant feedback. We also say it is faster. Yeah, it is faster. It is also cheaper. Okay, this mode also can be used to communicate to people who are both literate and illiterate. Okay, then we also say this mode also is it's an advantage to use this mode of communication because you are able to assess the moods of the recipient. Okay, then what are some of the disadvantages of this mode of communication? One, we say since it is through spoken words, there is no records. Yeah, it is something that you cannot refer to because you don't have anything that has been written, and therefore it cannot be used as a legal document. Okay, we also say some of the disadvantages is that information can be altered. I can tell you something today, tomorrow I'll come and say I didn't tell you that. So it is not possible to have permanent information, because I might change the information to suit myself. Then we also say this form of communication lacks confidentiality. Confidentiality in what sense? If I'm passing certain information to you, okay, and maybe we are in a group of so many people, perhaps what I wanted to say was only meant for you, but because perhaps we are many, that information would end up being with the wrong people. So there is no confidentiality when it comes to oral communication. We also have the written communication, which we say now is a communication through writing. Now this one, you write a letter, you write a report, you write minutes, you write a memo. So it is through writing. Yeah, and some of the advantages of this method of communication is that it can be used for future reference because there is a record. We also say it can be used as a legal document, which is binding. Okay, we also say this method can be used to pass complex message because it is in writing, so somebody is able to follow up. Yeah, if it is a procedure, since it is written, they're able to follow up, and therefore they'll be able to understand. Some of the disadvantages of this mode also is that there is no instant feedback, because you have to wait until the recipient receives the message. After that, they'll be able to give their feedback later. So feedback is not instant. Okay, then we also say this method can only be used for people who are literate, somebody who is able to read and understand. Okay, then we say this method also is expensive because you have to do a lot of typing, you have to put that letter into an envelope, you have to post it, so it is also costly. Okay, then the other method is what we call the visual communication. Now visual is what you see. You can see pictures, you can see posters, you can see billboards, yeah, graphs, etc. So this is something that you see. It is passing information through pictures, graphs, etc. So some of advantages of this method of communication is that there is a record of reference. It can be used as a reference in a future date. Then we also say it can also be easy to understand. Look at the examples of posters that you get to see. Yeah, these posters have been designed in such a way that it is able to understand them immediately. Okay, then it is also used for people who have mental difficulties, but the only thing that we need to do is to see. Yeah, so it can be used for people who are also physically impaired. Some disadvantages is that it's expensive because you have to spend money to come up with billboards or to print pictures or to put up posters. We also say it requires skills to interpret. Unless you have certain level of skills, it will be very difficult for you to understand it. Then we have the audio visual. Audio visual is now see and hear. So advantages of these are also billboards, TVs, etc. So some of the advantages of this mode is that there's a record for future reference. It is very accurate. Yeah, it can be used to overcome language barriers. Disadvantages is that we say it lacks personal contact. There's no contact between the sender and the receiver. We also say it is expensive It's expensive to put up advertisement on radio, on TVs or billboards. Okay, so we also have the non-verbal. Non-verbal is now where you don't communicate, you don't say nothing, but you behave in a way to suggest, and through that you communicate. So this is communication through signs, yeah, through body language. For example, if I fold my hands like this, it means I am interested to hear what you're saying. If I hold my hands like this, it means I am bored. If I wink, if I open my eyes wide, it means I'm not understanding or I am confused. So this method is through the signs, body language. You behave in a certain manner, and by so doing, you're able to pass certain communication. So then we also have the electronic communication. Now this is through gadgets, this is through computers. Okay, computers. Then we have other systems like online banking. This is electronic communication. Okay, so I hope that with those few remarks, you at least have an idea of what methods can be used to pass certain information. Okay, so thank you so much for your attention. So we'll see you in the next audio. Bye, and enjoy your day.